Hey,
Good morning.
good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. You look very nice today.
Thank you.
Let's see. Trying to gather all my notes. And Zachary, Pucha. And have you had coffee already?
I don't drink coffee a lot. I just usually have tea, and I had some this morning.
Oh, really? What kind of tea do you drink?
I drink like a highly caffeinated one, like a black tea, like an extra caffeinated black tea. Because the like coffee makes me dizzy. I don't know why. When I drink enough of it, it just doesn't make me feel good. So
I've never been a tea drinker. I'm sorry. But my dad drinks a lot of tea, and he talks a lot about like the black tea.
yeah.
He actually just drove up from Texas, and he got in yesterday, and he drank a lot of tea. So they do say it's stronger.
Really? I did not know that.
I thought somebody had told me that there's more caffeine in tea than coffee,
Interesting.
but I don't know what that dizzy component would be.
I'm not sure. When I have a cup of Americano, it just does not. I think it has to be like a latte in latte form or something that's, I don't know. It just does not. It's a new thing. I usually used to drink a lot of coffee, but lately it just has not.
Yeah.
Well,
I went to one restaurant and they had Turkish coffee.
I love Turkish coffee.
Yeah, but is there a place here in Richmond that has that?
Maybe. There is a place in Manchester. I think it's called Jerusalem Supermarket, and it's pretty far. It's like a 25-minute drive from here that I usually get some of my stuff from. They might have it.
I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah, it's like this small supermarket that sells a lot of different things. They do some Arabic food too. I've never had them. I've never had theirs, but they have the option.
We'll have to talk about restaurants later because, yeah, like I know for us, there's some like Latin markets that we go and get all of our spices at.
Are there Latin farmers markets here?
No, they're like in like small little like Latino markets that like we found two of them in the South Side, and that's where I get a lot of spices. But now I can find them on Amazon. So
yeah, Amazon has changed so many things. It's pretty interesting.
I know.
I've never thought to look at Amazon to find the stuff that I want, but I should. Because I don't really cook Arabic food that much because it's so complicated and just takes a lot of time, especially like, I love grape leaves, but like stuffing them takes a lot of time and cooking them.
Oh yeah. So I say my dad, but he's my stepdad and he's Greek. And so they do the dolmadas, the grape leaves, and they stuff that. And so he remembers his mom, my grandma, taking him and go picking like the grape leaves growing up. So finding a Greek restaurant is kind of hard too. He's really picky. But same with the Mexican food too. I mean, a lot of the Mexican food here is kind of like, I don't know. I'm gonna turn my printer off.
Did you grow up in Richmond or
I actually grew up in DC area. So I grew up in Northern Virginia, Alexandria, which I feel so lucky to have grown up there because it was like our public school system, like Fairfax County, was like the best of everything because you had so many different cultures living in that area. So not only did you have like the best food and like the best restaurants in that area, but from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade, you were just surrounded with different cultures and it was just normal.
Yeah, it's such a big mix of people up there. I mean, Fairfax especially.
Yeah, yeah. Good morning, Doreen. Can you hear us? If you can hear us, you're on mute. Let's see. There we go. Yeah.
Good.
How are you?
Some technical difficulty this morning with this iPad again, but is it okay?
Yeah, I can hear you perfect.
Okay, can you see me?
Not yet.
Oh, you can't. Okay, let's try.
There we go. Perfect.
Okay.
We can
Okay,
see you,
great.
we can hear you.
Okay, good.
Good morning, Pooja. If you can hear us, you're on mute. There you go. Hi.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. We were just talking about foods that you eat around the holidays and
Everything.
everything that you eat when
Yeah,
you're
it's
around family.
bad.
Me and my husband have been doing like a low carb diet for probably the last 3.5 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
so the holidays are where we're like, we're going to eat it all.
3 years?
I understand.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's commitment. I am definitely a carb thick loving lady.
Yeah, I'm with you. But I do the same thing. I try to really be good up until the holidays, and then like maybe a week before I start cooking, and then it just all goes to pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't live without pasta. It just doesn't work for me. I can't.
Early this year, I was like lucky enough that we were able to go to Dubai before COVID hit. And I think we ate Pizza Hut there every single day because it was just delicious. So then for Halloween, we got Pizza Hut here. And the entire time, me and my husband are like, this isn't good. Like it was better overseas for some reason.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think it's funny to try and determine what everybody does for the holidays. Is that what you were talking about? Because everybody does a different version, I think.
Yeah, well, Maj and I were talking about grape leaves and like dolmadas that are Greek, and so my stepdad, who's Greek, their stuffing actually is so much different than American stuffing, because it's like nuts and grapes, and so you don't have a lot of that breading carbs that Americans have. So it was just like a different flavor. So to taste those different cultures for those holidays as ingredients are, it's still really good and tasty.
No, I bet. A real good friend of mine is a great cook. She's Greek, and I love Mediterranean food, even though I'm Asian.
What do you guys do around the holidays that maybe is different from ours?
I pretty much do the traditional now, although sometimes I add a little seafood. I mean, years ago, this is really the old Virginia way, is that sometimes you do dressing and stuffings with oysters and seafood in it. So that's something that my mother did, because my mother was American, my father was Asian. And so I've always grown up with and my father was a chef in the Navy. So I grew up with just every kind of food imaginable because he worked at NATO. So I was kind of introduced to all kinds of food, but it's gotten down to pretty traditionally the American Thanksgiving, other than maybe some seafood. But even I think people do so many versions of that, of what they do for side dishes. Everybody somewhat does a turkey, I think, most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all the side dishes. I used to really start a conversation with people all the time, just asking them about that, because I was always curious.
No, now I'm hungry.
I know. We should have started.
And poor Pooja, she said she's no carbs until.
I'm always hungry.
Girl, me too.
Growing up, before I got married, we always, me and my family, we just, because my parents had a small business, so they were working like 7 days a week. So Thanksgiving was the day that like the stores were closed. So we were able to actually have a great family dinner, and it was always just Indian food. But now that once I got married, I actually got to do like a traditional Thanksgiving with my family. So I was like, this is different, but it's cool.
You know, we have similar backgrounds, Pooja, because my family I grew up in a family business too, and I know how that is.
Yeah. We never went on vacations.
Yep, agreed. Yep, my parents did that. It was like 24/7
Yeah.
with businesses as I grew up. I mean, I grew up, I was like, okay, it was child labor because I mean, from the time I was old enough to reach a table, I was doing something for my parents, you know, tied to the business.
Yeah, exactly. I was always working at the store.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I fell into hospitality, that was when I started traveling, and I never stopped. I was like, this is great. Like, without my family, I've traveled to every state.
Oh, wow. That's great. I've actually done jobs in every state but Alaska.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I haven't gone to Alaska.
Yeah,
But
I have not gotten to Alaska, but I've had 4 projects in Hawaii. But I've literally done projects in every state but Alaska. I don't know
Well,
why. Alaska.
I guess, I mean, you're in government, so I guess that's where they kind of fall.
Yeah, I did at one time years ago all the tax assistance centers for the IRS in the country, which was a real challenge. But yeah, that really took us to a lot of locations. I didn't travel to every one that was installed that I designed, but I went to a lot of them.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Hey, can you guys hear me? I'm having some issues with my camera.
Oh,
This is Zach.
hey, Zachary. We can hear you just fine.
Okay. I have a Surface Book from work, so I'm logging on to that. But you might just need to, well, I guess we'll have 5 minutes or so for people to connect. So I'll try and connect in that time.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I guess we'll give until about 9:03, 9:05.
Okay.
Will we actually see the people? Will we have like a big screen of different people that are actually joining, or will they only see us?
They will only see us, and we are
Okay.
recording this so that we can share it.
Okay.
So a lot of people can go back and watch unfortunately, if they have meetings right now, because a lot of them want to watch it later on, or share it with friends and family. So we will go ahead and distribute that too.
Yeah, I'd like to see the first couple, Debbie, if that's, I'd love to see the other ones.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen for our sponsor, which is Glavian Homes. And then we'll wait until a few more minutes, and hopefully Zach can get his camera. Can't believe it's Thursday already.
I know, me either.
The daylight savings has just really thrown, I think, a lot of people in a loop.
I agree. I'm just now adjusting.
I don't know if I'm adjusted yet. I know last night, I think it was like 6:30 or 7, but I felt mentally like it was 10 o'clock.
I think it's the colder weather. I think we get in that hibernation feeling. At least I do. When the weather gets colder, I just get sleepy earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I love the cold weather. I like wait till this time comes. Me and my husband hate the summertime.
Oh, really? I just just like all the seasons. I like having all the seasons, you know.
Same. That's where I grew up with in Pittsburgh. I had like four like defined seasons.
Hmm.
Actual snowfalls and blizzards.
I know we haven't had snow in like really bad snow in like 4 years.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And you know, it's really strange because when we had that last snow, I live on the beach, and we actually, it was so cold that we actually got like these iceberg things that I've never seen in my lifetime on the beach, that were all along where the, you know, the waves break. It created these huge, I have pictures of it, these huge.
I was just about to
ice.
ask, do you have pictures of it?
Yes. It's really crazy. It's the first time, like I've lived on the beach for 30 years. I've never seen that. But we got down in the teens for several days and had a northeaster with it. And it just built these huge, look like ice sculptures out there. It's very odd. Kind of pretty though.
Oh, I imagine it'd be very beautiful.
It's a nice, calm day. I'm looking out the window. It's a nice, calm day on the water today. Very calm.
I'm just so glad it's not raining anymore.
I agree.
I'm really just hoping it starts snowing and we don't have that freezing rain. That in between isn't the best.
I agree. I'd rather it snow. I hate cold rain. It's the
worst.
It is the worst. No, the worst is when it's, I think I agree with Pooja, in the summertime when it's so humid and sticky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
Yeah.
I'm used to dry weather.
And then some of us with, you know, I don't know about you guys, but your hair then becomes like Monica Geller from Friends, and it's just like
oh
starts
my God.
expanding and getting bigger and bigger. It's the worst.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I just don't think I like to feel hot. Like, I don't like that feeling. It's like uncomfortable.
All right, guys, it's 9:03. Let me go ahead and go back to us. Stop sharing.
Can you tell if anybody signed in yet?
We do. We have more people signing on. So, Zachary, do you think that, or Zach?
Yeah, I'm still here. Camera's still not connecting, but I'm not the main star, so I guess we could make it work. Or if you.
Yeah.
Okay. Just let me know, I guess, when we have a good amount of people in, or if people are still joining, we could get started.
Let's give one more minute because we do have a lot, some more people coming in. Let me get my chat feature. Okay. Okay, Zach, if you want to go ahead and start, I think we'll be ready.
Sure. Okay, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to our 5th and final episode of our Diversity Through Design webinar series. This episode is sponsored by Glave and Holmes Architecture, and we would just like to say that we really appreciate their support, and we're very happy to have been able to partner with them on our last episode. I myself was a panelist on the previous episode. I had less technical issues then. If you can't see me, I can't see me either. My camera's not working, so sorry about that, but we do have a great panel today. Before we get to our panelists, I just want to introduce myself and tell you a little bit about my background if you did not catch the last episode. So I was on episode 4, promoting architecture and design to the youth. And I've been interested in architecture and design since then, growing up in Brooklyn, New York. My father is an engineer, and my mother was a graphic design major. So I kind of grew up, interested in between the two, and I fell into making spaces for myself to do certain activities, and I kind of loved making spaces for specific purposes, which took me to the field of architecture. I studied that at Hampton University, and then I looked at designing at a larger scale after traveling abroad and studying urban design. I continued my education at the University of Miami and specialized in sea level rise, which led me to Norfolk, Virginia, where I currently work with Work Program Architects, who has just celebrated their 10-year anniversary officially as of yesterday. So we'll get started today by hearing from Doreen. She's one of our great panelists, and she's going to tell you about herself. Doreen, if you could give a little 2-minute introduction, and then also say why getting involved in your community is so important. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This is Doreen Fentress. I wanted to let you know that the name of my company, I own my own company now, is Plan B Concepts. I have been in the industry for 30 plus years. Some people local may know me from years ago. I did work locally. I've worked nationally for pretty much 25 years in interior design and facility management and program management. I actually started out many years ago with a dealership. I did design there, and then I was a salesperson, sales manager. And then after that, I became the vice president of a company. It was actually my sister's company called Quality Technical Services. We are a facility management company, and I ran the facilities division of the company. I was the vice president there, and that's when I started doing most of my really nationwide work more extensively, and then very large projects in Washington, D.C., and up through New York and Manhattan. And then I actually, after I worked at Quality Technical Services, I then became a business development director for the Mid-Atlantic for a global, I won't say who, but a global manufacturer that we all know. I was there and headed up distribution for all the dealers in that region and managed them and the people in that area, worked out of a showroom. So I lived in Washington for several years, and I've worked out of Washington for probably 20. And then back in 2015, I decided to come back home, which is my home here in Virginia Beach, and start my own company, which is Plan B Concepts. And I'm really a design project management company, do some design, but mainly project management for large corporations in the government. So one of the things I've always been and very community oriented. I think my sister and I we grew up in a family that was a family owned business, but we were always community oriented in trying to do things to give back. And one of the areas that, or one of the actual charitable organizations that I am very strongly tied to is the Salvation Army. I believe that we all, especially in design and with our contacts, we can all do a lot for our community in different ways, whether it's your church, whether it's your favorite organization. We have so much knowledge in facilities, organization, logistics, connections to manufacturers to get better possible purchasing ability from those where we can help our community or certain organizations. When I went to the Salvation Army, my sister and I actually chartered the first women's auxiliary of the Salvation Army in the Hampton Roads area in Virginia, southeastern Virginia, and I was the first president. In the first 2 years, I got enough women, professional women together that we were able to build 10 houses for homeless women, mothers and their children. Which is not something that you find a lot. There's a lot of homeless areas for actually for more men than there are for women. So we did that. So I was able to use my design, my connections in the community through construction, through manufacturing, finishes. All of those things were very important. And, we were able to do a lot. And actually, I was able to get people in the industry to donate a lot of things when they knew what we were working for. So I think we actually as a group can do more than you would imagine because of our background, because what we can do, for our favorite charities. And I think that's important.
That's great, Doreen. It sounds like you've been a boss long before you started Plan B Concepts at all your various positions. So I really appreciated you talking about taking that expertise and bringing it to the community.
Well, I think that, one of the things, and I have to give my sister a lot of credit for this, is that my sister was she was actually a trainer and strategic planner. She believed in that all of our employees in our company took leadership training. And through the years, I was very lucky that I was able to be with a lot of companies that did leadership training. So yes, I have been in management, and I think I have a little bit of that background because my family owned their own businesses, and that's how I grew up.
Yeah.
So, the management training and the leadership of organizing people and being a team leader kind of comes naturally to me. So that's one of the things I think we can all do in our jobs, even if we're not in that position with the company or whoever we're working with. It's always good to have a leadership role or have that mindset in anything that we do.
That's great. That's a perfect segue as well to our next panelist, Pooja. She's recently become self-employed and become her own boss. So I'd like to have her give her own introduction about her background and talk a little bit about how getting involved in the community and uplifting minority voices can also help small businesses.
Thank you, Zachary. It's a pleasure to introduce myself. My name is Pooja Galati. I'm a certified interior designer with a little over 10 years of experience, large chunk in hospitality, commercial, and residential. Unfortunately, like a majority of businesses, especially small businesses in this country, the firm I was at was affected by COVID in the beginning of the year. This had prematurely jump-started my plans to start my own business. Fortunately, I had a strong network of clients and was able to present my skill set to a number of new customers, which has shown me a wonderful return on success. One thing we have to keep in mind with today's ever-changing environment, that just like our clients wishing for beautiful and efficient homes and businesses, our clients themselves are very diverse, whether it be their occupations, mindsets, or nationalities. Helping every client to the best of our ability is the number one way that I have been able to help all voices, minorities included. My community and reach has a substantial minority presence from all walks of life, and what has been great is that I've always been open to learning about new projects. But in this environment, a wonderful side effect has been that I have been able to actually learn, truly appreciate, and hear the voices of those minority clients, soaking up amazing insights, both industry specific and culturally, like a sponge, insights that I 100% believe will help me in the future, both personally and professionally. Growing up in Pittsburgh, my parents had small businesses. Being minorities in a small, big city, they were part of an already developed group of minority small businesses. I'm a huge advocate for minority-owned small businesses. As we look forward into the future, we will see that this will not just be regulated to the cities, but across the country as a whole. Something I'm pretty excited for and something we must all be ready for in anticipation. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great, Pooja. So we're going to switch to our next panelist. He's going to discuss how volunteers can overcome some of their reservations that they may have had so that they can get further involved with their community. Pooja did a great job talking about uplifting the voices of all people. And Maj is our next panelist. He's going to continue that conversation and talk about how you can uplift your own voice.
Morning, everyone. My name is Majd Saudi. I am an architectural designer here at SMBW. I've been here for a year now, and I'm fresh out of school, kind of. I graduated in 2019 from Virginia Tech. I grew up in Amman, Jordan, which is far distance from here, and I've always wanted to be an architect. Unlike Zachary, my parents were not architects or were not involved in the design discipline at all. But my dad's friend was a prominent architect in the region, and I've always been very inspired by him. I grew up talking to him about, air catchers, passive heating, passive cooling systems that were important in that region. And I guess moving from Jordan to Blacksburg and getting a very Western education that had a profound impact on who I am as a designer. And in the beginning, I did have a hard time formulating my argument as a designer, as an Arab Palestinian designer. I think how you can get involved is to look into yourself and be comfortable with your own identity. And that happened during my years at Virginia Tech. And that happened because I had mentors who helped me and gave me the space and the platform to figure out who I wanted to be, which idols I looked at, and how I want to build my space around the world. And the way Virginia Tech was, the academic style of Virginia Tech was that we're all immersed together. And I was able to find my community there, and they all encouraged me to look within myself and be comfortable with who I want to be as a designer. And that just goes a long way in figuring out who you want to be, which causes that you want to align yourself with.
Mm-hmm. That's great, Majd. So we're going to swing full circle now that you've met all of our panelists. We've heard a little bit about how you can be involved in your community, how you can uplift the voices of others, and how you can uplift your own voice. So I'd like to take it back to Doreen, and I have a question about how you can find organizations to get involved with. You spoke about the Salvation Army. You also spoke about being a leader in all the positions and jobs that you do have. So as you're trying to get involved with different community organizations, can you talk a little bit about connecting that back with your work? If you're still working for another company, what are some ways that you would encourage people to get involved with different community organizations and join the two?
One of the things, Zach, that I want to mention, and I didn't mention this originally in my introduction, is that the company that I worked with when I worked with my sister, we were an 8A, a certified 8A with the federal government, which was a small minority woman-owned business, actually disadvantaged business. So that's how we started out. I think that in general, when we got into that arena, truly working with the diversity departments of corporations and also working through the federal government with other minority companies, it really opened the door to a lot of other charitable and community situations that we could do. Now, one of the things that we did do is once we did begin being very successful when we were in 8A, and this was back in the mid to late 90s, we began coaching other small businesses. And we had in like a mentor protege program, and we continue to do that to this day, that we helped other companies that were small companies to get started and to know how to work within the government, with corporations, and also within their community. Because I really think that when you find that you are successful in your business and being successful in your community, both of those are strong links to each other. Because when you have other people that have the mindset that you have of wanting to give back and give to the community, they're going to be better clients to work with. I think you're going to find more successes, with that connection between the two. We did work with situations in all of the diversity organizations like NMSDC, with WeBank. All of these organizations also work with other charities. And we tried to work with a lot of charities for specifically coaching minority women that owned companies. So that was like a pet project for us to really help in any way that we could. So I think you're going to find a link to these other organizations when you, and I really encourage everyone, if you have not either registered your minority status, if you own your own company, either with the state, with the federal government, with large corporations, you should really seek that out, because you're going to find a huge community of coaches that will help you and that have experience that can help you figure out what you need to do in business without a lot of times hard work. It's still a lot of hard work, but an experienced person can really help you on the road of going that way. And another great group is Habitat for Humanity. I mean, we can really, really use our background in working with Habitat for Humanity. And I know that there are also, a lot of churches that do missions in different areas of renovations for homes, for areas that are affected by storms. I know that probably 20 years ago in Virginia, there was a very bad flood in Franklin, Virginia. In the downtown area, and offices, city offices, attorneys' offices, all these small offices were completely ruined. They had like 8 feet of water in there.
Wow.
And I took my entire design group down there. We just decided we were going to dedicate a week to what we could do to help them. And we did that, and actually had one of our very large clients donate all the furniture they had in storage to these companies. So there's always a link.
That's a great story. Was that all pro bono that week?
Yes, we did pro bono work for that entire week. We knew that, it was very important for me that I hired two different situations I actually described in interviews when I hired my employees. And that was, number one, they had to be able to travel at the drop of a hat. Because we did nationwide work. And number two was that they understood that they had to help their team, and that we were a group that helped our community. And they had to be, have that same feeling of that they wanted to do that.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. That's so much humanity shown, empathy. It's incredible. And it seems like once you align yourself with, like you said, like-minded people, you get that same in return. You said you have one of your largest clients that donated all that furniture when they sold. Yep. So that's great. That's a great story. So on the same topic, there's a few organizations that people can get involved with that we've touched on. One that we haven't spoken about is the YWCA, and they're obviously more focused on women that are coming up. And I'd like to switch it back over to Pooja to talk about how it feels to be part of this current movement that we're seeing of women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses. We're really just seeing a large push. So since she's a part of that, I'd love to hear her take on this current movement.
This is a great question. I'd like to start out by saying a quote that was sent to me by my mentor that kind of relates back to this. A woman who is self-reliant, positive, optimistic, and undertakes her work with the assurance of success magnetizes her condition. She draws to herself the creative powers of the universe, end quote. The empowerment of women and recognizing her greater potential is not only a powerful movement, but a strong step in the positive direction. I love seeing these amazing organizations and what they do. They provide a voice for those who are scared to speak, and they provide confidence. Kind of relating it back to design, we always have to speak up and provide our feedback and opinion. I kind of see it hand in hand a little bit. Organizations that provide such support and help break down barriers bring our communities together. On a side note, I was fortunate to be blind to a lot of the social problems that exist today. Now living in a different community outside of my hometown and seeing social struggles, cultural struggles, and unrest in a different environment, I truly believe these organizations like YWCA and others are more important than ever because I grew up with these. And I feel like all communities need a chance to live in that blessed environment.
Yeah, that's another beautiful point. You know, if you have access to something and it benefited you, it's great to be able to give that same experience to someone else. So in a similar way, you know, Habitat for Humanity gives people homes that would not have otherwise have had homes. We're currently also seeing, you know, a lot of housing insecurity, especially with the current pandemic and a lot of the mortgage deferments coming to an end soon. We're also seeing a lot of income inequality. We're seeing the working class kind of get more stretched out and thinned out. So I'd like to switch over to Maj to see what his experience is in his current work and how some of these ideas about solving housing insecurity and income inequalities are showing up.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I'd like to say, and we hear this repetitively, is that design is a service, and being an architect or an interior designer is a direct service. You don't serve yourself, you serve the community around you. And
Yep.
Habitat for Humanity is so important because it gives people ownership over their space. And this goes back to Pooja's comment about uplifting human voices, but this happens directly in the physical environment and is seen visually. I see this in my work because, you know, first of all, design can't discriminate against social class or any sort of people, and it happens in every project. I think it's important that we give our clients ownership over their own space, and it's important to find cost-effective solutions that are creative and change the space dramatically and give our clients joy and excitement.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where Habitat Humanity comes in, is that, you know, it's important that we serve our client and we uplift their voice no matter who it is.
Yeah, that ownership is such a crucial point. It's such a sense of pride to be able to say that you were a part of something, that you created it, and now it's yours. So I have a follow-up question for you. You were talking about while you were at school, finding a community that you identified yourself with. At school, I imagine it was a little bit easier because you have people from all over coming to study. But once you started working as a professional, can you talk about how you got that comfort within yourself to be able to help others?
I think that's a very difficult question. I guess there's very different factors to think about right now. There's a global pandemic. It's difficult to meet people and be involved in the community. But I think the way I've been trying to go about it is to always indulge in conversations. I think, you know, meeting Debbie was very important because I wouldn't be on this panel today. I've always been in close contact with, you know, architects in Jordan, and I've always been involved with them, and I'm always talking to them and having conversations about difficulties we have being in any community, and that's where through social conversations, that's how I find myself be still effective and be involved in the community. It's how you get engaged.
That's great. So I wanted to touch again on the topic of ownership. Switching back to Doreen, you've had a lot of experience working in communities that may not have previously had ownership of things. Can you talk about that experience of giving someone that opportunity to own something?
Wow, I think that's, you know, truly, you know, so important. People don't understand unless you work directly with them. And I can honestly say that I really didn't. Until I worked with the Salvation Army, we specifically did this homeless center. It is just amazing of how small things to have some ownership of the space that you're in. And the smallest things are very important. I think we all take for granted a lot of times that, you know, we are in a safe environment or we're in an environment where we're comfortable with. Someone that's been homeless does not always have that, or because they're homeless, they are not able to have a lot of possessions. I know one thing that always was, I just thought very heartwarming, and I hate to say really, you know, seem really corny about this, but we had a older group of ladies that were quilters, which is something you don't find anymore. And all of these ladies were, you know, well into their 70s. And every child that came to this community at the Salvation Army, they did a quilt for them with their name on it.
Wow.
And it was just incredible that these children had something that was theirs and was made specifically for them. You know, I can't even express, you would have to be there to see these children get these things that these, you know, ladies would sit, you know, day after day. And as soon as we knew we had a child that, and their name, these ladies who are quilters would begin making these quilts for them. So then when they came to the home, which may be the first time that they'd really had a room that they'd been in, they had their own quilt. So I think ownership, having any involvement over, you know, what you have, which we also would let them have like a gift certificate. They could go to one of the Salvation Army stores and they would be able to get things that helped personalize that space for themselves. So I think we, until you have nothing and then you're given something, that opportunity, it's hard to, I think, understand that till you're in that position. But I know just from what I've seen, it's extremely important.
Yeah, and it seems like it could be done again, I guess, at a variety of scales. You kind of have to meet your client or your community where they are and see what their needs are.
Exactly. It's, you know, I see a lot of people, and I know this is kind of off that subject, but I see people now in the situation that we are, that you know, we're kind of lucky in a way that we know enough about office furnishings or environments or whatever that we can easily work from home. You know, I just can't imagine what it's like for a lot of people that are disadvantaged in that situation, you know, now that they're trying to find a space, in a very small space, to, you know, have their children work. They try and work in a lot of these communities that have either lockdown or are going to be in a lockdown situation. It's, I think, very difficult. And I think that's something that we could definitely help with.
That's a great point. So I have another question for Pooja. We talked a little bit about mentorship, especially when you introduce yourself. It's clear that you've had the benefit of having great mentors, and it seems like you're in a position to become one yourself. I know you'll probably keep your mentors, you know, with you throughout your life, but can you talk about that experience of being mentored by someone, and then if you do have any mentees currently, how you've made that transition to receiving help and then passing that help along to your community?
Yes, of course. I've had an abundance of mentors my entire career, especially women mentors that I kind of had gravitated towards. And they have stayed in my life and my career this entire time. Majority of them are in Pittsburgh, so being in Virginia and like bringing them with me has been nice too.
Yeah.
They have really uplifted me. They've really pushed me in the right direction. There's been times when I was working at other firms where I just was lost and didn't know what to do. And I just knew that I could call them up and I had the answers. And it was always really nice and it was great. In previous firms, I was a mentor to a lot of the younger designers there. They really did like to see what my opinion was, how you moved about certain aspects of projects, or how you took account to different clients, and we not we sometimes have really difficult clients where you don't really know how to address them. So I have had quite a few mentees where I help them through that. But in the process, I probably did still go to my mentors and ask them if I was still doing the right thing. And even with my own business, I still touch base with my mentors. I'm like, is this right? Is this still like, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? I think it's a big part of my success, and it's another kind of community and family that I have created.
That's great. That's such a honest but a very humble response. You know, if someone really is able to help you, it's always good to be able to lean on them, and as they're helping you, you're passing that help along to other people.
Yes.
So thank you so much for that. So we heard a few stories from Doreen's work past, and I know Majd has a story, I believe, about a pool project. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Can you share that with us, please? Thanks.
So my experience with SMBW was so great in the beginning and still is now, but I think that spearheaded me into the professional world. I was given a small project in a community pool, and I think the trust that I was given and the advice that I was given throughout this whole process was so helpful, and it gave me my confidence as a designer in a very completely different world, because I guess the transition from being in school to being out in the world is very different. So I found myself, quickly catching on to difficult design decisions and details that I couldn't figure out. And the way the studio structured here is that I could approach anyone, and they were also approachable and helpful. So that has helped me make that project a success, and I think it is a successful project, and it serves the community now. So it's great to see that transition from lines into something that's physically present in a space that people can use.
And can you talk about how you figured out what the community wanted? I believe it was a community that you're not a part of, so that experience is something I really want to hear about.
Yeah, so my principal here, Spencer Grice, he's directly involved in that pool, and his kids often visited that pool. So he was, in a sense, my mentor in this project, and in a way a client. So I would meet with the board of the pool. It's called the Ridgetop Pool. The Ridgetop Recreation Association was the client, and I'd meet with the board often, and I'd show them where we were progressing with the designs, and that I would constantly ask for their opinions. And even it's important as a designer to be open to whatever they have to say, because in the end they're the ones who are inhabiting that space, and they're the ones who are using it. So being in constant conversations and looking for their opinions is important throughout that process.
That's great. Okay, now Pooja, I'd like to hear a story from you, if you have one, about a time when you've worked on a project that had you really involved in the community, and just kind of explain to us how you were able to connect with them and give them something that they needed.
Sure. I'd say it's a local project here, Fawn Lake neighborhood. It was a country, their community, not country club, clubhouse, their community clubhouse. It was, they had a board of 20 individuals who also had sub boards with 10 individuals each, which I think practically made up the entire neighborhood. So it was really understanding what each individual wants. It is an older set community, old mindset of a community, trying to bring in more of these new, fresh, young ideas into the space. So they weren't as open to some of the ideas. I did really bring a lot of my hospitality background into this, trying to create charging stations and little seating zones and areas. They weren't too keen on it. They weren't too excited about it. And it was really just kind of walking them through and really helping them understand what the pros and cons of each of these design elements were. And that, I think, really helped the community understand better and gain more of that design features.
So kind of being an educator to your community.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely learned throughout my career that you have to be an educator. You have to educate your clients. You have to educate, working on a brand. You have to kind of educate the brand that you understand what you're doing. You understand what's going on. So definitely you have to be an educator.
Great points. So we have, I think we have a question that came through. This question is asking, how can we make sure that mentoring remains strong during COVID? And the issue that the person asking the question is seeing is that it may be hard to ask for help during this time, just because it's remote. You have to formally call and ask or email or something like that, and that might show a little bit of weakness for the person asking for help. So if anybody has any questions about how to keep mentoring going strong, or any responses about how to keep mentoring going strong, that'd be great.
This is Doreen. I don't think you should ever, you always have to ask the question. I don't think, and, I doubt there's very many people that are going to turn you down if you need, a question answered, or you need a mentor. You would be surprised how many people that you reach out to are going to be helpful. So I would try to look at it that way. Don't be afraid to reach out. I mean, I have people do that all the time, and I'm, more than willing to either share my experience or give them guidance or give them a direction to go in. So I wouldn't be afraid of doing that. And I also wouldn't look at it as something inferior because you have to ask a question. To me, when somebody's asking a question, they're looking to learn and improve themselves. And I think that's the way you should look at it. Don't be afraid to do it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we might have another question. So this question is for Majd. They're curious how your home and your culture, being from Jordan, informs your design or your design process.
I think that's a very good question. I think that the way I kind of move through design is I look at precedents, and my precedents are always usually from the region that I grew up in, and those precedents kind of drive the way my design decisions. So, for example, in the pool project, I had these slatted walls that are made of wood. They're like screen walls, and that's a direct. I got that idea from looking at the traditional Islamic mashrabiyya, which is, it's an architectural veil, and it's a screen. So looking at these precedents inform me directly, and I try to reshape that and make it relevant to the current community that I work in.
That's great. The more you talk about it, the more I know I need to visit this pool.
It's a really small project, but I can share pictures with you later.
Yeah, I'd love that. So I think I don't believe that we have any other questions coming in. If you guys have questions, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, and we have a couple of questions in there, and then you can also put it in the chat if you have any. But there are some organizations that we wanted to make everybody aware of. So we've talked about the Salvation Army. We spoke about WeBank. We also talked about a business, if that applies to you. We spoke about Habitat for Humanity, the YWCA. But we have not spoken about the Red Cross. Do any of our panelists have any experience with the Red Cross? No? Okay, well, that's another one.
The Red Cross is very similar to Salvation Army.
Okay.
I've not worked with them directly, but I know that they do some of the same things. They have huge disaster relief programs. You know, the difference is in the Salvation Army, and people, either this is a good thing or bad thing for people. The Salvation Army is definitely a Christian-based organization that you have people that are physically in the Army. The Salvation Army is actually an army of people that belong to and they are mainly married couples that as you come into the Salvation Army, you are like ordained ministers almost, and counselors. You know, Red Cross does the same thing, and Salvation Army does not discriminate against anyone, ethnicity, sex, nothing. You know, they will take anybody in. Red Cross is the same. It does a lot of the same programs, but they are more, they do have government money that comes into the into the Red Cross, but they are similar organizations in that they help a lot of times the same groups of people.
It's a great explanation. You also mentioned MSDC or NMSDC.
Oh yeah. NMSDC is, and let me make sure I can remember this, is the National Minority Supplier Diversity Council. This is an organization that is obviously nationwide, that you have to apply as a small minority business to be in the organization. It is made up of Fortune 100 and 200 corporations, members from those corporations, their diversity departments, and then small diversity companies. This organization actually matches large corporations with small companies and their services. So the large organizations actually make a pledge that they will come to NMSDC to look for their services and products first to see if they can get it from a small minority company, our diversity company first, and provide work. So it's a great organization. I think I talked about this before. They even have scholarships that are there. I got a scholarship to go to Darden Business School at University of Virginia for an executive MBA. So, it's a great organization to go to. We Bank is a woman business enterprise national council. This is for woman-owned businesses and woman-owned minority businesses specifically. And they are also a certification group for the WOSB, which is Women-Owned Small Businesses through the Small Business Administration.
That's great. Thank you so much. So I also noticed that we had a follow-up question to the question about mentoring during COVID. So this person is curious if we have any advice on how to identify needs, because it can be harder to see the opportunity since we're all remote and separated from each other. So if you guys have any advice on how to identify some needs while we're working remotely within the community, or someone asking for mentorship or something like that.
I think that especially in this time with COVID and staying remote, I think it's always just nice to reach out to people anyways, just to see if they're doing okay. And I think that just like picks up on other conversations of identifying those needs. I know I've done that a lot to a lot of my mentors and mentees in the past, if they're okay and how they're doing, and that just picks up a whole different conversation that evolves into design and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and I completely agree that that's a great way to text people, call them, but everyone that you've worked with, in the last 2 years or so, you can always reach out to them. I'm always doing that to try and find out how things are going. Do they still have their job? Because you can make connections there of either placing people in work or giving people work or finding work yourself.
That's great.
I think from a mentee perspective, it's important to identify your own needs and not be afraid to voice them. When no one understands you more than yourself does. So it's very important to see what you need, what difficulties you're facing, and be able to talk to your mentor about it. And you don't have to have an assigned mentor. It's pretty much anyone around you. You can learn from anyone. So communication is the most important aspect of this. And I've started at SMBW in November, and we found ourselves in the pandemic in February. So
Wow.
I guess I've been more involved. My career is more post-pandemic or during the pandemic than it was before. So
Yeah. Well, you're very optimistic, you know, and you take initiative, so that's great. But I really like the comment about just, you know, reaching out, checking in, seeing how people are going, and that might coax other people that are um, less outspoken to kind of speak up about what they may need. So I think those are all of our questions. I'd like to thank everybody that was able to join this morning. Of course, thank you to our panelists for their great responses. Thank you to our sponsor, Glave and Holmes Architecture again. For our panelists, do we have any final words that you would like to give our attendees? We'll start from the top with Doreen.
You know, I'm going to give, if anyone, you know, needs a mentor or has questions about what I talked about, my email address is Doreen, DOREEN .Fentress, FENTRESS @planbconcepts.com. You know, I'm always available to help other small businesses either make connections or, you know, help them in general, answering questions if I can help them from my experience.
Thank you very much. Do you mind if I put your email in the chat box?
Oh, no, absolutely.
Okay. Let me know if I got it right, if you can see that.
That's correct.
Okay. Pooja?
One thing I would just say is be vocal and don't be afraid to get yourself out there. It may not seem like it, I'm a really shy person, but you know, because of COVID, I had to get myself out there. I had to voice myself and really put myself out on the spot to get some work that I'm doing now. So be vocal and don't be afraid to get yourself out there.
Thank you so much. Majd?
what I would say is, I mean, as someone who's new to the whole professional world, is to never be afraid to ask questions. Find your idols who you align with very strongly. I found, you know, architects that I look up to greatly who, you know, I've always looked at their work as precedent, and that's very important. And never be afraid to say what you want to say and ask, I guess is what.
No, that's great. That's great. Our panelists really gave some great answers. So thank you. I couldn't have said anything better myself. Oh, we have one more question that came in. Yeah, we have a few minutes. So the question is, have your firms found ways to help the community while also balancing profitability? It's hard to do your paid work and pro bono. So what's the sweet spot to have impact while also being business savvy?
This is Doreen. I think you know, you have to be really committed that you're going to do it after, you know, after the time that you can get your work done. I mean, it's obviously it's important to all of us to be able to keep our jobs, keep the work that we have economically. But, you know, don't overcommit is one of the things I would say. Yes, you can do small things with the community, but also whatever you're doing charitable, give them a realistic deadline of when you can do things for them. But I think you can probably always squeeze out a little time. But obviously, your priority is these days is the economics of it, that you have to do what's needed for your job or your business first. And then carve out a little bit of time for the charity work that you can do. And I'm just a true believer that, you know, when you give, you get. So I think that, you know, the charitable work that you do will bring business back to you eventually.
That's great advice. I really appreciated your point about being realistic, because that way you're not, putting extra pressure on yourself and you're being transparent.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Do you have any last words from IIDA?
Thank you all for joining our panel and everyone who are the attendees. I think that, a lot was mentioned about being mentors. And as, Maj had mentioned, really finding himself when he went to Virginia Tech and finding those mentorships. So I think if we could say anything to the young people who are still in school and just finding themselves within a pandemic, I think that it's pretty clear that a lot of the firms are open and willing to be a kind of mentor as well. So yes, please reach out to your professors, to your colleagues, the people in your classrooms, but also feel comfortable to reach out to all of the architects, designers, engineers that are in this A&D community. We very much are open to helping. And to also be a part of IIDA, ASID, YAF. There's so many great organizations that just want to do the work. So I want to say thank you to everyone. Also want to remind you that you can donate to Teens with a Purpose. And that, of course, was a link on the website when you received, when registering. So if you have any questions, please contact us and we'll go ahead and try to get those answered. And continue to shoot us an email, shoot us, a direct message of just ways that we can kind of go from these conversations to the next phase. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.